In 2006, two 18-year-old former child stars launched a fashion brand with no logos, no advertising, and clothes so plain they looked like nothing. Today, that nothing is worth $1 billion, and a single handbag has a months-long wait list. How did the row turn absence into the ultimate presence? Picture Mary-Kate Olsen in 2005, challenging her sister Ashley to make something impossible, a perfect t-shirt. Not good, not great, perfect. This wasn't about fashion. It was about obsession. They spent months testing fits across different body types, analyzing how fabric fell, how seams sat, how cotton breathed against skin. Where other brands were churning out dozens of styles per season, the Olsen twins were still adjusting the angle of a single shoulder seam. When the row finally launched in 2006, it wasn't with a splashy runway show or celebrity campaign. It was 7 pieces, total. A white t-shirt, cotton leggings, a cashmere dress, and 4 other items so understated that most fashion editors couldn't understand why they cost so much. Barney's New York bought the entire collection anyway. Something about those 7 pieces felt different. The t-shirt alone had details invisible to the eye, French seams hidden inside to prevent bunching, a proportion that somehow made everyone who wore it look taller. The fashion world expected another celebrity vanity project. What they got was an architecture lesson. The row wasn't adding to fashion, it was subtracting from it. No prints, no embellishments, no obvious design elements that screamed, "Look at me." The clothes were so quiet, they were loud. And here's what nobody understood yet. The Olsens had just invented a new economics of desire. By making less, by showing less, by saying less, they were creating more value than brands spending millions on advertising. The name itself was a manifesto. The Row, after Savile Row in London, the street synonymous with bespoke tailoring. But unlike heritage brands that plaster their history on every label, the Row's connection to its namesake was almost secret. You had to know to know. This wasn't fashion, this was a test. And passing the test meant you understood something that the twins, barely out of their teens, had somehow figured out: luxury wasn't about having more. It was about needing less. By 2007, something strange was happening. The Olsen twins, who'd spent their entire lives in front of cameras, started disappearing. No interviews about the row, no social media, and this was right when every brand was racing to join Facebook. When pressed for quotes, they'd send one-line responses through representatives. When fashion magazines begged for profiles, they declined. Instead, they hired Lauren Hutton, the iconic model from the 1970s, to be the face of their lookbooks. Think about that logic. You're trying to build a fashion brand in the age of celebrity worship, and you hide the fact that you're celebrities. You have built-in fame that could sell millions, and you refuse to use it. The fashion establishment thought they were insane. But watch what happened next. In 2012, The Row won its first CFDA Women's Wear Designer of the Year award. The Olsens didn't attend the ceremony. They sent a representative to accept. That same year, they opened a Paris office, expanding internationally while maintaining complete invisibility. No backstage interviews, no designer bows at the end of shows, no documentation of their process. This vanishing act wasn't shyness, it was strategy. Every time the Olsens refused an interview, the row became more mysterious. Every time they skipped an industry event, people talked about them more. They understood something fundamental about human psychology. We value most what we can't access. By making themselves unavailable, they made their brand invaluable. Fashion journalists started calling it shrouded mystery. Customers described feeling like part of a secret society. When you wore the row, you weren't wearing the Olsens' fame. You were wearing their absence. And that absence, that negative space, was becoming the most powerful force in fashion. Inside the Row's New York studio in Tribeca, there's a fitting process that would make most fashion executives weep. A single jacket can go through dozens of iterations. Not different designs, the same jacket, adjusted by millimeters. The angle of a lapel changed by 2 degrees. The button placement moved up 1/2 inch. A pocket depth increased by 1 centimeter. This is what the Row calls engineering, not designing. Engineering. Each piece constructed with the precision of architecture. Take their signature camel coat. From the outside, it looks simple, almost boring. But inside, 16-gauge double-faced cashmere, a weight so specific it required special looms. Heat-regulating camel hair lining that most customers will never see. Hand-stitched internal seams that take 4 times longer than machine stitching. Details that add thousands to the production cost but zero to the visible design. The production team, led by Joe Carbon, described workers as passionate about making clothes. The art of making clothes as opposed to cookie cutter. This wasn't hyperbole. The row was refusing the fundamental economics of fashion. Make it fast, make it cheap, make it disposable. Instead, they were building clothes like Swiss watches. Invisible complexity, unnecessary perfection. Consider their approach to tailoring. Before launching menswear in 2018, they spent 2 years just on research. 2 years. Not designing, not producing. Researching. How shoulders should sit, how trousers should break, what interior construction would allow a jacket to hold its shape for decades. When the menswear finally launched, it looked like it had existed forever. That was the point. Mary-Kate once said a row piece should feel complete, like it's the right product. Not look complete. Feel complete. The difference matters. It's why customers describe an almost physical reaction to wearing the row. The weight of the fabric, the way it moves, the temperature it maintains. These aren't clothes. They're experiences engineered to feel inevitable. 2014, Los Angeles. The row opens its first boutique, and it's hiding, literally. Tucked behind a house on Melrose Avenue, no visible signage, no window displays. You could walk past it 100 times and never know it was there. Once inside, you don't find clothes. You find a swimming pool. An actual swimming pool in the center of what's supposed to be a retail space. The clothes? Scattered sparingly around the edges. A single rack here. A lone coat there. Pole care home tables and Jean Prouvé chairs competing for attention with the actual products for sale. The space, designed by David Montalba and Courtney Applebaum, won architecture awards. Not fashion retail awards, architecture awards, because this wasn't a store. It was a meditation on space. 2 years later, New York. The row takes over a 3-story Upper East Side townhouse. Jacques Grange, who'd designed homes for royalty, fills it with Basquiat paintings, Man Ray photographs, a Frank Lloyd Wright mirror. The clothes are almost incidental. Customers describe spending hours there, not shopping, but existing. One insider called it warm and generous. It feels quite soothing, as if they are perfect space to wear their clothes. London, 2019. They install a James Turrell light sculpture at the entrance. The actual clothes are several rooms away. You have to earn the right to shop by first experiencing art. Paris, 2024. After an 8-year search, 8 years, they find a corner space with too many windows. The sisters admit the windows are a design challenge, but they choose it anyway. They hire a former Chanel design assistant just to create custom blinds that filter light in a specific way. What's happening here? These aren't stores, they're behavioral modification chambers. Every element, the spacing of hangers, the absence of mirrors, the museum-quality furniture designed to slow you down, to make shopping harder, not easier. The row had discovered something counterintuitive. The more difficult you make the purchase process, the more valuable the purchase becomes. Customers don't browse the row, they pilgrimage to it. They plan visits weeks in advance. They return multiple times before buying anything. One customer described the recognition between row wearers as like part of a club, a nod, a wink. The stores aren't selling clothes, they're selling membership. And the price of entry isn't just money, it's patience. $3,300 for a sweater, $4,500 for a coat, $7,000 for a handbag. These aren't prices, they're barriers. Walls that the row built not despite their height, but because of it. Here's what most luxury brands won't admit. High prices are usually about markup, not materials. The row inverted this. Their prices reflect actual costs, the 16-gauge cashmere, the hand stitching, the years of development. But more than that, the prices are a filter. They ensure that anyone who buys has truly considered the purchase, planned for it, saved for it. Industry data reveals something remarkable. Only 16% of Row products ever go on sale. The industry average, 50%. When markdowns do happen, they're modest and late in the season. The Row doesn't need to discount because Row customers don't want discounts. They want the full price. It's proof of commitment. The Margot bag, introduced later in the Row's evolution, became known as the new Birkin, not because it looked like a Birkin, but because it behaved like one. Consistently sold out, waiting lists, customers planning purchases years in advance. Searches for the Row spiked 93% year over year in early 2024. But here's the twist. The Row doesn't limit production artificially. The scarcity is real. They simply refuse to make more than they can make perfectly. This is price as philosophy. The Row isn't pricing out customers, it's pricing in commitment. When everything costs a fortune, nothing is impulse. Every purchase becomes a relationship. Customers keep Row pieces for decades, plan wardrobes around them, pass them to their children. The clothes aren't expensive, they're permanent. Fashion journalist after fashion journalist noted the same phenomenon. Row customers recognize each other instantly. Not by logos, there are none. Not by obvious design cues, there are none. But by something subtler, the way a coat drapes, the proportion of a trouser, the particular shade of cream in a sweater. It's fashion as secret language. And the price? That's just the tuition for learning to speak it. 2024. The fashion world discovers a new term, quiet luxury. Suddenly, every brand is removing logos, muting colors, preaching discretion. Media credits shows like Succession for making understated wealth aspirational. But the Row had been doing this for 18 years. They didn't predict the trend. They created it. When the Wertheimer brothers, owners of Chanel, and the Bettencourt-Meyers family, L'Oreal heirs, bought minority stakes in the Row in 2024, the valuation hit $1 billion. A billion. For a brand that barely advertises, rarely discounts, and refuses growth for growth's sake. The fashion establishment that once dismissed them as just another celebrity brand was now studying them like a holy text. But here's the question that haunts the Row's success. Can you scale a whisper? The brand built its entire identity on scarcity, difficulty, absence. Now, with major investors, pressure mounts to grow. More stores, more products, more access. Everything. The Row trained its customers not to want. Some see vindication in the quiet luxury movement. Finally, the world caught up to what Mary-Kate and Ashley understood at 18, that fashion's future wasn't about more, but about less. Others see dilution. When everyone whispers, "Is anyone really quiet?" When Zara makes minimalist basics, what separates the Row beyond price? The answer might be in what the Row refuses to discuss. Succession. The Olsen twins, now approaching middle age, still personally oversee every detail. No creative director waiting in the wings. No expansion into home goods or fragrances or the 100 other categories that billion-dollar brands typically exploit. Just clothes. Still, just clothes. The Row spent 18 years proving that absence could be more powerful than presence. That difficulty could create more desire than ease. That silence could speak louder than any campaign. They built a billion-dollar empire on everything fashion said you couldn't do. But empires, even quiet ones, make noise. The very success of the Row threatens its founding principle, that some things are valuable precisely because most people can't have them. The brand that turned nothing into everything now faces its hardest challenge yet. How do you stay absent when the whole world is watching? How do you maintain mystery when you're worth $1 billion? Perhaps that's the final genius of the Row. They've created a problem with no solution, a success that undermines itself, a whisper that became a roar by trying to stay silent. Fashion's perfect paradox, dressed in a $3,300 sweater that looks like nothing special until you understand everything that's missing. The Row didn't change fashion by adding to it. They changed it by showing what happened when you took everything away. Logo, marketing, trends, personality, accessibility, even the designers themselves, all absent. And in that absence, in that perfect nothing, they built everything.